It's Michelle Thompson here, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit about figuring out what makes you feel fulfilled. Having that sense of purpose, that feeling of where do I go from here? How do I make my life happy? Well, we're going to kind of approach the subject of value systems. And I think that you will actually enjoy this conversation. So, the very first thing I'm going to ask you is, how would you define those values? Now, before you actually answer that question, you need to know exactly what in general values are. Your values are the things that you believe are important in the way that you live and you work. And they should determine your priorities, and deep down, they're probably the measures of how you use to tell if your life is turning out the way that you want it to. When things that you do and the way that you behave match your values, life is usually pretty good and you're satisfied and content. But when these don't align with your personal values, that's when things feel wrong. This can be a real source of unhappiness, and that's why making a conscious effort to identify your values is so important. You see, values exist whether you recognize them or not. Life can be easier when you acknowledge your values and when you make plans and decisions to honor them. If your values are about family and you work 70 hours a week in your job, well, you probably going to have this internal stress and conflict. And if you don't value competition and you work a very highly competitive sales environment, you're likely to be unsatisfied with your job. In these types of situations, understanding your value can really help. When you know your own values, you can use them to make decisions about your life, and you can actually easily answer these questions, like, what job should I pursue? Should I accept this promotion? Should I start my own business? Or should I compromise or be firm about this position? Should I follow tradition or travel down a new path? Well, if you want to learn more about how to figure that out for yourself, I have actually created a workbook that's actually free. That's for you, and all you have to do is just click on this link below and collect your free workbook that you can just work through the problems and kind of figure it all out. Also, too, I am giving you a free hypnosis audio. So just click on the link and collect your gift, and have a wonderful day.
Awesome sauce. Trying to get everybody here on screen. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Andromeda 7, your celestial gateway and your channel for community support, help, friendship, love, knowledge, and just plain being of value to others. Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, it's good to have you with us. If you're returning, thank you. And it's Friday night. You know what that means. It's time to feed your mind and grow your heart. And tonight's topic is, take it away, Teresa.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much for your continued support. We love each and every one of you. And welcome to our 3 new followers on our Instagram account. We appreciate that.
Welcome.
And we hope you enjoy our show this evening. Feel free to check out our channel lineup and catch up on some of our other shows. See, there's lots of things
some of the
out there.
playlists, too. Those are fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the playlists group things together, make it easier to find. So welcome back, Michelle. I tell you, as you heard in the video from Michelle herself, values help us live with direction and purpose in our lives. And they're like a guiding compass. It's what we believe in. It's what we think about things. And whatever we value in life. And whether it's going on around us or within us, values show us our path forward for expansion and growth. And it also, if you stick to your values, it can help you make better choices along the way. And they're intimately linked to our sense of self. And they're essential, I think, for mental health. Because when I've been out of balance with the very things that I believe in, and I find myself going down pathways that aren't necessarily beneficial to my lifestyle. And to sum it up, Steiner once wrote, "Our highest endeavor must be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction in their own lives, a need for imagination, a sense of truth, and a feeling of responsibility. These three forces are the very nerve of education and of self-mastery." So Michelle Thompson, for those of you who don't know her, because we have a lot of new members now following us, she's an author, an international transformational mindset life coach, a board-certified advanced clinical hypnotherapist, NLP master, and spiritual teacher. Michelle believes in the power of overcoming the mind. She has created a place of peace in her program where you can go and let your mind be at rest. She offers in-person sessions in the comfort of her office or virtually through phone sessions, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, and other conferencing tools. She's worked with people all over the world to help them transform. I'm one of them. No matter where you are or what your personal needs are, there's a way to heal and manifest your dreams. And tonight, Michelle will tell us what's new, what she's been up to, and all about one of her newest program offerings, how values can affect your happiness and how they can tank you if you're not following your own happiness. So
listen to that intuition.
Welcome, Michelle. And we have all her links and everything in the YouTube description. Lori put them all in there in YouTube, to her website and her Facebook page. And I'll turn it over to Michelle. Michelle, welcome.
Hi. Well, thank you so much. I wasn't expecting to see that video.
Told you we were going to share it.
Oh, that's awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, do you want me to just dive in and just start?
Let's
Absolutely.
dive in.
Okay.
Just go for it.
All right. So, this is a spiritual community, so I'm going to kind of take it from that angle. Okay.
Good.
The thing is that a lot of times when we find that we have blocks or we can't seem to be able to contact our spirit guides anymore, like all of a sudden things just kind of stop. It's like, what just happened? Or we're not getting visions, or we're not lucid dreaming, or whatever it is that, or we're just not, connected, or maybe we're having bad luck. Who knows? Things just seem to be happening. Well, the thing is that that's usually because typically when we're not happy, when there's something that is going on, it's because we're not in alignment with what our spirit needs. Okay. So, our spirit is inside of us, like begging inside, saying, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to do this. And a lot of times what happens is we start overthinking, or we start putting other things in front of it. So when I'm talking about values, what I want you to do is I want you to sit down for a second. Get out a pen and piece of paper and really write down the things that are important to you. Okay. What's important to you? Because if like I said in the video, if you feel like family is important, but you're working 70 or 80 hours a week, you're not in alignment to your personal value system. And so what ends up happening is there's some unhappiness that starts to come up. If you're like this really great spiritual person, you're into having workshops and you're doing, crystal healing and all kinds of cool stuff, and yet you have a disgruntled situation with somebody in your life, then sometimes
that can make it tough.
Sometimes, but you're saying, okay, so my value is about love, but yet you're not being loved, right? Because you're angry instead. And so sometimes those things can create unhappiness. So the goal here is to really kind of evaluate who you are, because if those things are happening in your life, that means that something's out of alignment. Now, a lot of times we think that we have certain values, and I think I was talking to you guys about that earlier before we got on here. Sometimes we think certain things about ourselves, okay? And yet, when we start to go through it, we realize that's not making me happy. And so sometimes when that happens, you really have to, your value system may change. And sometimes you're really just not paying attention to who it is you truly are or what your needs are,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and that can cause a lot of problems,
Mm-hmm.
like I was telling you guys, my husband and I, we bought an RV and we moved into it for a while, and
Yeah.
it wasn't in alignment with who I am, because I'm very crafty, I'm very artistic, and I need that space, and it's really important for me.
Mm-hmm.
Values can be determined on a lot of things. It doesn't have to
Sure.
be like family or, this, you know what I'm saying? Did you want to say something, Lori? Go
Well,
ahead.
I was just thinking, you just value your downtime, that
Mhm.
your alone
Yeah,
time, that time with just yourself. And I think that's really important. And some people
right.
just don't take the time to do that, or they
Yeah.
feel like they
Mhm.
can't, or they need to be around someone all the time. But
Yeah.
when you start to become comfortable with yourself, it's really easy to be alone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love being
Sure
by
is.
myself,
Mhm.
because I'm talking all the time to people all
I
the time.
bet.
So it's like, so my downtime is very valuable
Yes.
to
You're
me.
like, yeah.
And and
You know,
the creative part of me, it's so important to express.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have to do that, or I feel like a part of me is missing. And so like when
Absolutely.
we were in that space, it wasn't available for that to happen. So when I actually recognized that within myself, I said, okay, we're getting a house, and we're going to get a big house. And we're
Right
gonna,
on.
you know,
And
and
you can be on the east wing and I'll be
yeah,
on the west wing, and everything
exactly.
is beautiful.
Well, it's not that big, but yeah, yeah, I know what you're saying. But that's true, though.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
he has his own man cave.
I
I mean,
love
it's
that.
like the whole nine
And you
yards.
guys respect your space,
Yeah.
each other's space. And that's what
Mhm.
makes it work. Because it's like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you can have your downtime, I can have mine, or my time to reflect or be creative. It's so important
And
to keep
yeah,
in balance, right?
right. And sometimes values change. Like what
Mm-hmm.
career may be really important to you at one point, and that may be very, you know, super important. And then later on,
Mm-hmm.
you might feel that, you had some children, and so family may be more important.
Yeah.
And you a lot of times I've ran into clients who feel like because they had children, they kind of lost a part of themselves, and they really didn't feel like that
Mhm.
they were like important anymore. But when we really got down to really understanding, what they really desired, it really was about family. And they had to kind of like work that out within themselves,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Just balance.
I know there's been times, like even in my own life and career, where I'm glad we're having this discussion tonight. By the way, welcome everybody in the chat room. Sophia, glad you could join us
Hi,
again tonight.
Sophia.
Good to see you. Yeah, Karen's back.
Yep. Aaron's back with us, Dalibor and
Yeah,
Grandpa Brian.
Grandpa
Yes.
Brian.
Welcome.
But no, I really resonated when I first saw your email announcement with your
Mhm.
video. I was like, boom, de boom, boom. And the reason I did that is because had I hooked up with someone like you in my 30s,
Mhm.
I may not have tanked my own path for a while.
Mhm.
And I really brought havoc upon myself because I went against my own values. I compromised my values and I replaced them with a set of values that weren't in synchronicity with who I was as a person for most of my life. So I ended up doing things for a company that I would not normally have thought to do before. And I had the most miserable 5 or 6 years. They were wonderful in bringing in money, learning more things, seeing the country, contributing at home financially. I had justified in my mind all the positive things about what I was doing, but the unethical business practices that I was exposed to and had to partake in made me ill. It
Mhm.
not only made me ill physically, it made me ill mentally. I had a
Mhm.
breakdown because of it.
Mhm.
Had
Wow.
I known what I know now, or what you're trying to do with people, is you're putting up your resistance to your own self,
Yeah.
and you're throwing obstacles in your own path. You're making choices that lead you ultimately down roadways that you might not have otherwise done had you paid attention to the fact of how important your own values are to you. That's
Mhm.
not to say
Yeah.
that we don't evolve.
You have to stay close to your heart,
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so funny you said this, Teresa, because I actually had something happen in October of
Mhm.
last year that challenged me. And I had a client who I helped out quite a bit. And because of it, she became a multimillionaire. And then from that point, she was so grateful. She started feeding me clients because she had a huge audience.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like we're talking huge, huge. And she just kept on, every video she talked about me, she was just
I
feeding me.
remember. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Well, one day she asked me to do something that I felt was unethical.
Mhm.
And I said no. And it caused a huge problem.
Uh-huh.
Boundary whiplash is what I
Yeah,
call it. Yeah.
exactly. I was like, this is a moral
Exactly, Lori.
issue for me, And I was like, I can't, and I don't want to lose this friendship, and I
Right.
surely don't want to lose all the business you're throwing me, but
Mhm.
I have to walk away. And I literally walked away. And I had to overcome the sadness
Yeah.
that I
Mhm.
experienced from that.
Mhm.
And
The loss,
yeah,
the
yeah.
support.
And it was
Mhm.
hard for me because I felt like I really believed in this person. I thought this person was a good person. So
Uh-huh.
it was hard for me to um that was probably the hardest part because I was like, she sold herself to the dark side,
Yeah.
And it was like, how does that happen? How does somebody step into
You
that?
can be in the middle of it. I think it's evolutionary sometimes
Mhm,
because, like, I started out with good reasons,
mhm,
and I was in a mental health care company providing invaluable services to people who really needed the help.
mhm,
But when I got involved in the business side of it, and they put me out there as the person to fire people and
mhm,
implement these financial models, it happened before I knew it.
mhm,
And one day I just looked at myself in the mirror and said, "This isn't me. What these people are all about is not what I'm about. And I'm not in this for what I thought I was in it for. And I can't believe I acted this way and did these things in the name of being a good employee. I compromised my values." It
Integrity.
happens to
no,
you. Yeah, it happens
yeah,
without you knowing it. And then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh shit." You
so
know?
you made such a really, really, really important part, compromising your values. So, you know, a lot of people are people pleasers.
Mhm.
So outside of work and stuff like that, we still compromise our values by letting other people define our worthiness.
Yep.
And that's still in the same thing. It's like, well, these people won't like it, or everybody tells me I should be
Yeah.
like this, or others
Yeah.
think
Huh?
this way. Are you
Uh-huh.
even living close to your heart, close to your spirit? If you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to find happiness. If you feel like you have blocks, you feel like you have uncomfort, if you feel
Mhm.
like you have any of these things, all of those things are symptoms to something not being in alignment.
Mhm.
So,
Well, what you're basically doing is you're leaving or giving your control of your happiness to somebody else when you do that.
Yeah.
And whenever you give the control of your happiness to somebody else, then it's never really in alignment ever with your own values and what you want to create in your life, even when you partner with in a relationship. That's
Mhm.
why I think it's really important, and why maybe we've been failing lately in long-term relationships and partnerships, is because we don't recognize the importance of value systems and how you have to have the same values or close to the same values to have any kind of consistency or long-term relationship. And it's difficult because, as you say, our values change with us as we grow and expand.
mhm,
And then if you don't grow and expand with your partner at the same time,
mhm,
then you have that situation where the values, and then your happiness fails, and then everything comes from that, right? After that.
Mhm.
So I think it's so important to look at the values between people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're so right. I just find that more people than not are struggling in this area.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
they don't realize it. And they it's almost like they're lying to themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the worst thing you could ever do, is to lie to yourself, because you really have to take a close look at who you are and what is going on. So that means what you desire and your actions need to be in alignment.
Yeah. Your feelings are an indicator if
Mhm.
something feels right or doesn't feel right.
Right.
And if you're going against that feeling, then you're going against the intuitive part of yourself that's
Well,
saying,
here's the thing. Your life is a reflection
right.
of what you really are doing.
Yeah.
Okay. You
Yeah.
know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Mhm.
And I mean, Teresa, you're a really good testament for that. When there was a point in your
Yeah.
life, and then you had this big shift, and then your life like took a whole new turn. You started this whole, YouTube channel. You really started like engaging with spiritual people. You started making shifts. I mean,
Yeah.
you're a perfect example of that. But if you look at your life and you see things that you don't like, that means that there is there's a what is the word? It's not in alignment. It's
Mhm.
Disconnect.
a disconnect.
Yeah.
That's the word I was
Disconnect.
looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Imbalanced.
Mhm.
Disconnect. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. That means that you may say, "Oh, I'm spiritual," or "Oh, I'm love," or "Oh, this." But if you were love, you really were love, then all the people around you would
Yeah.
be love.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I learned from one of my first spiritual masters that I had was that he told me when I first started working for him, he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm love." And he goes, "No, you're not. You're not love." And he just looked at me and he goes, "You're not love." He goes, "Because your life is chaotic."
Mhm.
And he goes, "And if it was, it wouldn't look like this." He goes, "You're a candle." And he goes, "And somebody
Uh,
comes over there and they just blow it out." And so he said, when you become the light, there's only two things that can happen. He said, either others will transform in your presence, or they're going to run like hell, because they're going to be
uh-huh.
so
Or
uncomfortable.
you're gonna run like hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, Lori.
See ya.
Unfortunately, in my line of business, I don't get to run.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to
By
still
the
run
way, I'm sorry to hear that he's passed on, your spiritual leader, and I know that's a toll on everybody. But
That
boy,
was
do you
that was
have
a
a
big shock. I mean, because
yeah,
he's young,
yeah.
and I was just blown away.
Floored, huh?
Yeah, it was a very, very quick thing. He actually had a stroke. He went to the hospital. They did
Hmm.
some tests, and then they found that he had stage 4 prosthetic, not prosthetic.
Prostate.
No, no, it's the something to do with the liver and
Oh.
cancer. Um,
Oh.
and he died like within a month.
Mm.
Yeah, he stayed in the
Metastasized. Yeah.
hospital.
Hmm.
Yes, he stayed in the hospital, and then they ended up putting him in like a, one of those things where they just kind of like try to make things comfortable for you.
Hospice.
Hospice.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mhm.
I'm having problems talking tonight.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so they did that. Um, this was like one of my first ones that I had, but I do have somebody else that I've been working with for I always have somebody, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
always feel like, your coach has to have a coach, the
Yep.
spiritual teacher has to have a spiritual teacher,
Yep.
I mean, I have always had somebody. I did go a little bit of some time without it, and I was searching,
Hmm.
but I actually have a female this time.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah,
That's cool.
she's pretty amazing,
Good. Good.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. But
Well, now you know he's on your team on the other side of the veil, so
Yeah.
he's still with you. So you know.
Oh, I know. I
Oh,
know.
Dalibor was going to say something a minute ago. Dalibor, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, to the previous discussion about values, sometimes it's not a question of whether you're falling away from your values, but sometimes it's just a trade-off. Like everybody values freedom, but ultimately it's a trade-off of things like free time versus money. So I'll trade 8 hours of my time for, 8 hours worth of income, whatever that generates.
Mhm.
So it's usually the question of not necessarily not knowing your values, but not being able to hierarchize to prioritize them,
There
put
you
them in a
go.
hierarchy.
Well, actually, I want to ask you something about that, okay? Because maybe that is a value for you. I mean, think about it. It's a value for me. I mean, I personally, family's important to me, but my career is very important to me, and so I invest a lot of time into that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well,
Yeah,
see, that's
I'm
a
going to
that,
say something too
that's a
about
Yeah.
big
that.
there's a big difference between working for yourself and working for somebody else.
Mhm.
I've always prioritized working for myself as opposed to having a job as an employee. Those are two big differences. So for me it's much more valuable to put in 8 hours worth of work on my own business than working for 8 hours for somebody else's business,
That's
regardless of the
why that's
difference in
why I don't
pay.
work for anybody anymore.
That's
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
And
that's
something
yeah.
same here.
people not to get upset about or panic about is that we have our own cycles and routines and patterns throughout our life. And our values change, and that which creates our happiness will change with those patterns and our cycles. And it's more to know when you feel it's time to change it or break your pattern of a certain cycle or pattern that you're going through. We can get into ruts and to move on to a different pattern or cycle that you usually have in your life. But it's to know yourself, to know thyself, and to know yourself, and not get upset or get depressed or anything like that when it yourself, your higher self, is telling you when it is time to switch or break patterns to go on to one of your other value systems or
Right.
another value that you wanted. So if, like me, I'm being Gemini, of course I go through different periods of where work's more important or where privacy is more important or where it's more valuable for me not to be on the internet. I switch it all the time.
Mhm. Right. Right. It's
You don't.
it's a really good point that you're making. And
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And some people, they do like working for corporate America because of they value the stability, they value the comfort, they value the healthcare, whatever. I mean, there's people that find that very important. You know what I'm saying? And there's no right or wrong in here. What's the only part that we're really discussing here is, are you doing what is inside, what is your personal value system? Kind of like what you said, Daliber, you work for yourself. So you said 8 hours
Mhm.
working for yourself. I mean, I can work all the time. I love to do all different. I mean, I love to
Oh, me
work on
too.
my
Yeah.
website. I love to sit there and create my
Mhm.
audios. Any kind of artwork that I can do on the computer. It's so much fun for me. I love to create videos. I
Yep.
mean, all of that stuff is so fun for me.
It's a nice
Yeah.
outlet. It's a good
Yeah.
outlet for you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep.
And
I agree.
so I can stay up till like 2 o'clock in the morning doing this stuff, and I
Yeah.
don't even feel like
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're
I've
just in the zone.
You're in a
sacrificing
creative
anything, right?
zone and you're
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, it's just,
exactly. It doesn't feel like
yeah.
a sacrifice to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that,
Although,
that's why
I,
that's
yeah.
why you always have to distinguish: is it self-employment or is it employment? And for most people, that's employment.
Mhm.
Or when I refer to the 8 hours,
I
in
think you're
my case,
employed by self.
well, it's more like if you're self-employed, you're not doing a job, you're doing a vocation, you're
Mhm.
basically doing a hobby that makes you money. That's
That
that's how
that
I would
that's
describe it.
exactly
So it's
right.
not really work. It's not
Yeah.
the same 8 hours that you
Yeah.
spend.
Right,
You
right, right. So that's why I was telling you, Daliber, I really don't think it's about for you, I think you enjoy it. It's an important value for you to, invest that time into it. So you're in alignment with that. So that's good,
Yeah.
And Scotty said something funny. That's exactly why I set my bar low. I'm always stressing myself.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is to have like a series of mini victories before
Yeah.
you prep yourself up for a big victory.
Well, I personally, I value my off time as just as much as I value working. Okay. So I really have to have that balance. So I usually create like a 2 hour space in the middle of my day because I need that. And then I also make sure that I have time with my husband at night, and I give myself 3 days off. I don't work Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So, I mean, I lock that in. That's,
Yeah.
and that's because that's important to me.
Mhm.
And
Good boundary.
if I wasn't true
Healthy.
to that part, and I started taking clients on the weekends because they do ask and they do beg. And so they're like, you don't work on the weekends.
See, and which works for me is not
Yeah.
having any schedules, no time frames. I don't have
Yeah.
watches, and half the time I can't even tell you what day it is.
Yeah.
Except-
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
That's
you know,
awesome.
I
That's
yeah,
awesome.
but I work constantly. But my day,
Mhm.
my every day is different for me. I
Mhm.
never do the same thing twice. I'm always doing something different, and
So
I
that's
just
what your value is. I mean, that's
oh yeah,
important for you to
freedom,
have
complete,
variety.
yeah,
Yeah.
variety, freedom,
Right.
versatility. I don't like being
Yeah.
locked in.
So,
Live really in the moment.
Sophia,
So
you
switches.
you've been through a transformation, just like many of us have, and you've evolved to where you are at this point. How do you feel about this discussion so far? Did you ever feel out of alignment with your own values, or were you defining them as you went along?
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
that's fair to say. Um, I when I saw the title of this show, I was extremely intrigued and exciting because the values ring to pentacles. Pentacles is earth energy. It's of the north. That's the
Mhm.
foundational energy. So if your foundation is shifting and the other three elements aren't moving, if that's not a tower card, I don't know what is. That's just kind of from the tarot situation, especially.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to break this down. The east is the thoughts, is the swords. The
Mm.
south is the wands, is the action. The west is the cups, is the emotion. Okay, so if your emotions are not lining up with your foundation, if you're starting to feel different, then you need to rework the masonry in your foundation to allow and accept as gracefully as possible a shift. Boundaries are meant to move. Foundations, if they move,
Mhm.
you kind of have to
Yes.
energetically pre-party to do it gracefully.
Mhm.
And it starts with the mind. It starts with the thoughts. The thoughts provoke the action,
Yeah.
provoke the emotion, provoke
That's
the
right.
shifting of the
Mhm.
foundation.
Well, it
I'm
creates
a
your reality.
metaphysical nerd. Nice to meet you, Michelle.
I love it so much.
That's
So much.
great.
One of the reasons why I
Well,
like coming on here is because I do so much science-based stuff, Everything's about the mind and the science behind it and how to make this happen. But lately I have just been really craving this, I mean, like really craving that spiritual stuff because I am like super woo-woo. I mean, I'm like over the top woo-woo. And I don't get the opportunity to do that very often,
Yeah.
So
Being in the wooniverse. Yes.
the Wooniverse, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. I'm because I've been craving it so much, I feel like that spirit's been kind of like drawing me in that direction.
Nudging you. Mhm.
Yeah, I'd like to teach that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
suddenly all these clients start showing up and they're like, I mean, it doesn't say that that kind of stuff on my website, but they show up and they're like, I want you to be my spiritual teacher. I want you to teach me this. I want you to, and I'm like, what? How did you even find me? So it's made me kind of like reevaluate things because I feel like they're sort of pushing me in that direction. So one of the things that I've been working on is putting together a program which is that's like spiritual development. And I've been I'm kind of nursing that along. I keep on adding stuff to it. It's
That's
never
awesome.
enough. It's never enough. I just got to keep on doing that.
Right.
But
The way you've you've got them all set up as different modules, on your website. You can go to her website and see different programs that you can be involved in at different times, and it's just fascinating. And so,
Yeah, so typically what I do is I usually just have people do a free consultation with me, because it's so much easier to just have a talk with me so I can kind of assess where you need to be, because sometimes it's just one little hair out of place, and it's just a simple conversation that'll put you back on track. And other times it's very complicated, and we're going to have to do some deep diving and some serious cleansing, and it's going to be a 6-month deal, And so, I mean, sometimes it is like that, but I think what, one of the things that I'm going to kind of shift for a second, because this is an important thing, why it's on the top of my head, I want to bring up. Our lives we are creators, okay? We are spiritual beings that are super powerful, and we have the ability to create our life exactly the way we want it. And if your life is not the way you want it, that means something is out of alignment. Either you really are not being honest with yourself about what you really desire, like like some people will desire to be, have this online business or something like that. But really it's not in alignment with what they really desire, because they have a hard time with selling things, and that's not their value system. I don't like to sell, or something like that. So there's always these things, okay, that we get. So we have to kind of have that serious talk with ourselves and really think about, like, what is the truest desires? And most of the time we don't go for that, because we think it's too hard, or we think we're not good enough. And so if we can kind of like fix all that, and just start seeking out what we really, really want, and start moving in that direction, the universe just opens up. I mean, it just,
because you're not creating the resistance for it.
Right, because you're in alignment, and that's
in the
whole
flow.
thing. The universe just like literally opens up.
That's exactly how I would describe my life before COVID. I mean, I actually even said this a couple of times. I said, this shit is too easy. This life thing, it's just too easy, But then came COVID.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I actually wasn't even affected by COVID, which is really interesting. But
I was.
It didn't. It actually, I just went all virtual, and boom, everybody wanted to do it that way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were having some problems. So it was actually really good.
Yeah, you were already set up for it. You had already been doing it anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just a minor adjustment to just kind of go all virtual, and that worked out really well. But, kind of talking about you, Dalibert, just for a second, picking on you tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, I personally have, like, I teach manifesting, like a master manifesting course, and I have literally sat down and really got in tune with what I really want. And I'll just sit there and I'll write it and really try to get inside of myself. What do I desire? What do I desire? What do I really want? What do I really want? And I'll just kind of try to open that up inside of myself and write it out. And then I kind of contemplate, what is it going to take to get there? What are the steps that I need to do? What's that one thing that I need to do first? And then I'll go, okay, well, I need a good amount of cash flow. So I need a couple of clients to pay in full. And I'll write that out. And literally, because I'm really focused on it, I have literally gotten text messages within minutes after that.
I believe it.
Wow.
I believe that.
Because you're so like,
Oh yeah.
right? You're on the train track. You know what I mean? You're in that space, and it's and when you're on that train track, everything works out. However, if you're not,
okay, go ahead.
no, that's okay. If you're not,
No, go ahead.
what I find is the universe has this way of trying to push you in the right direction, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh
Like,
yeah.
and it's like a bomb blows up, you know, and then
Yep.
the door slams, and then the
Uh-huh.
house caves down in front of you, you know, and it's
Yeah.
like, I personally, when that kind of stuff happens to me, my first thing is, well, then show me, okay, if I'm going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And
Where's my sign?
and I
Where's
mean,
the
come on,
sign?
show me. Give me a
Turn
give me a
here.
sign here. I mean,
Mhm.
literally, I'll go, okay, all right, I'm listening. You know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's like, you know, because but most people don't do that. They see it as bad luck or
Yeah.
negative energy, or oh, it's because this person's negative around me, so it's impacting me. And I'm like, no,
Well, see, the whole
no.
COVID thing, well, I would say, yeah, this was like a tower card, for the
Mm,
whole world for 2 years. So it's not just, I'm not taking it personally because I know that I'm not the only one affected.
mm.
But everybody was affected, but to different degrees. It's just that I
Right.
was affected
Everybody
by
was
more than,
affected. Everybody
yeah.
was affected. I mean, almost everybody that I knew personally lost their jobs.
Hmm.
And
A lot of
I
people.
mean, that was a hard thing. But I mean, if you really want to get into it, I mean, we can kind of like break that down and really think about, were they resisting?
Sure.
I mean,
Hmm.
that's a question, because everybody
Hmm.
had to
True.
pivot and do something different, whatever
Mhm.
that means. And you know, how does that, you know, so a lot of people kept on wanting to do the same thing, you know,
Yeah. The routine.
not ready to change when the world
Mhm.
is changing.
Yep.
And there's this new show on Netflix um, about Spotify. It's called Playlist. I don't know
Hmm.
if you guys have seen it. It just came out. Anyway, so they're actually talking about that. It's about the music industry just refusing to change because the world was going digital. And they were just really, really having a hard time
Mhm.
with that shift. And it was causing like all these people going to court and fighting and all this. And that's why people fight, is because of resistance,
Mhm.
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Agreed.
And so like if we can, you know, so you've got the universe saying this, you've got the world saying that, and you've got your values saying this. It's like you got to kind of like find that space, because I can tell you that if you're really listening to your heart, not this is what I need to do, this is the only thing I know how to do, and you get very like, you know, blinded in your walk and not being open to what spirit's trying to tell you,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you're like, that's impossible, I can't do it, so you just kind of, instead, you know, like I was given some information recently and I was like, well, shit, I don't know anything about that, so you're just going to have to send me somebody who knows something about that. You know, and
Mhm.
that's the way I kind of approach it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to make a list of everything that I need, or what kind of people I need to help me with this. And
Well, you are a master list maker. That's how you do all of these programs. You have us
girl,
on
I've got
alert.
lists everywhere. I have more notebooks. Like I always have a notebook, and then I've got a chalkboard over here, and then I've got a
Yeah.
whiteboard over here.
Me too.
Keep it all down.
I got it. I mean,
Mhm.
there's too many moving
But
parts.
I'll have to say, yeah, lists are really good. Of course, we all need them to keep organized. But you'll agree, Michelle, though, you can think as many things that you want to do in your mind that you want. You can make as many lists on a piece of paper as you want, but you actually have to do one small physical act
Yes, ma'am.
towards anything you want to do before the system that we are in, within this construct, whatever this reality is. It does not know what you want until you make an actual physical act towards any kind of goal. So
Mhm.
You are absolutely
before
right.
it becomes created, that's where you get people. I know you can sit and think for years about the same thing, about what you're going to do, or meditate or pray and pray. It's all good. I'm not saying it's not,
Mhm.
but it's to become clear on what you want.
Well,
That's the
that's what I
process you're
love about
saying.
her programs, Karen, because
Yeah.
Clarity.
when you get into
Mhm.
her programs, she has you do the list, but there's always an action item
That's right.
Mhm.
that you have to move. So
You
she gives
have to.
you she has you create in your own mind, in your own thought, that catalyst that
Mhm.
gets you off your butt
That's right.
It puts you in a
And
forward motion
so
with
Mhm.
that list. So it's
right.
Yeah, action. I mean, nothing happens if you don't
Yeah.
take the action. You know, you can feel like I said, you can feel inside of you loving, like, and you can say, "Oh, I'm channeling the divine," you know, and you can feel feel it. But how do you act? Like when
Implement it.
somebody,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
like if somebody's complicated or hard to deal with, are you loving towards them?
Mhm.
You know, because those are the people that need it the most.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because here's the thing, hurt people hurt people. So if somebody is, you know, a real turd, then that usually means that somebody's been that way to them and they built up resistance inside of them. And so they're fighting, you know, they're fighting to protect themselves. And that's why they behave that way. So, you know, you've got to kind of a real loving person is going to be able to see through that and be
Yeah.
able to say, okay, you're a hurt person
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to love you through this and help you see that divine inside of you and bring that light out.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yep.
And
The thing that I find valuable about programs like yours, well, particularly yours, you know, I'm fond of yours, but there are others I've worked with, Michal, Medina, there's others, is you bring out, you get us to the point through the meditations
mm-hmm,
and the lists and the meditations, the exercises, the visualizations,
mm-hmm,
you're helping us bring it out from within, deep within ourselves.
mm-hmm,
So it becomes our creation and therefore our next step.
mm-hmm.
You know, you're opening that doorway. It's like opening a portal to something much more positive within. And so there are people who have a hard time doing that by themselves, especially if they got family pressures, they got jobs, COVID was going on. There were so many things going on in a whirlwind. It's easy to get lost. It's easy to start resisting even your own self. So when you sit down and actually go through these exercises and do these meditations and visualizations, you're just bringing it all up and out, and you're opening yourself up to the point where you can be more receptive to your own self and what you really want out of things. And so that's where the transformation occurs in the mind and in the heart, so
Well,
that you can put those
you've got to
plans
be
into
willing.
action.
You've got to be like willing. So, in other
Yes.
words, you've got to be coachable. You've got to be open. You have to be ready to see it, ready to feel it.
Ready to do the work.
Right.
want
You
it.
know, because so I'm like I told you, I'm fixing to launch a new spiritual program and it has a lot of like meditations to open up, you know, more inside
Mhm.
of you. Like it's more like a spiritual awakening kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I asked in my Facebook group that if there was some volunteers who'd like to work with me as I'm creating these and kind of like say, you know, what do you need? You know, what I need, you know, like I went to some of the more complicated ones real fast and some people, you know, didn't know, had never even meditated in their life. So I learned real quick that I had to start really simple. And so that was kind of the stuff that I learned in developing this.
Yeah.
And and so I knew that I was going to have to do this, but there's one specific person that was doing it and she said that doing the some of these exercises that she realized, you know, that because she couldn't see it, because she couldn't get the answer, you know, for instance, like it's like, you know, like you did the one, Teresa, where you're pulling the things off the walls and removing the blocks.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so some of these are like literally like communicating with your spirit guide and they're
Mhm.
showing you what the block is, or you're, you know, or you're traveling into another dimension and you're looking at things from a different angle. You know, like it's a little bit more like woo-woo kind of thing. And they couldn't even visualize anything or hear anything or see anything. And so this particular one said, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not hearing anything. I'm not getting anything. I still don't know what my blocks are. And I said, keep on doing it. Keep on doing it. Just keep on, stay on the same one over and over and over again until you get it.
Right.
And she did. She ended up sending me a message just the other day. And she's like, this changed my life. I see it now. And she goes, and what I realized was I was not open, and that's where, the problem is a lot of times nope, I've tried this. Nope. I mean, it's
art of allowance. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
it's
Gotta allow
like
it.
you have to be willing to step into that
That's what
space
Sophia said
and
just
be
before she
willing to
left.
grow. Right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people want to keep on doing the same thing over and over again, and then they want a different result.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's very common. That's the definition of insanity. It's like
Yeah, that
Yeah.
doesn't make
that's like
sense.
it's like staring at a Rubik's cube and
Yeah.
just looking at one side.
Yeah.
You're not visualizing all 6 sides.
Yeah.
And in order to solve the puzzle, you have to see all 6
Yeah.
sides. And it's not a visualization necessarily, but it's more like visualization.
Yeah.
Where you're really paying attention to, like, okay, this is how I reacted under this circumstance. I made this choice under this circumstance, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And this got me here. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm curious.
that's what you're saying. It's absolutely correct. And that's so important. You've made some really good points, by the way. That whole disco ball, he said disco ball. Now I'm saying,
I have a disco
that
ball.
I
Rubik's
like his analogies.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. The Rubik's Cube is a really great thing because I actually do this exercise where I take some rocks and I put it, like on here, and they're like black rocks. And then behind it, I throw in some blue ones and some yellow ones and stuff like that. And then, if they're on the screen, then I'll say, okay, what do you see? And they'll tell me I see some black rocks. And I go, well, you're wrong. That's not all that's there. And they're like, and I'm like, but if you change your perspective and you go up and you look down and you open up your perspective, then you're able to see more things,
more dimensions.
And there's more dimensions inside of you. And so a lot of times, like with this whole value thing, we don't realize the complexity and the multidimensional sides of ourselves.
We're doing the Y graph while totally ignoring the Z dimension.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's like so important because we're just kind of running through life like little zombies, just rinse and repeat, doing the same thing over and over again, and then complaining because our life isn't happy.
Yep.
Well, your life will be happy if you really determine what's important to you and you live and act and behave by that standard.
So what do you tell
and
people?
Sometimes you need a consultation with somebody other than yourself. You can't usually do this by yourself. That's why you have things like therapists, people like you, where that person is going to take that Rubik's Cube and just shift it 90 degrees and say, all right, what does it look like now?
That's very true. What were you going to say, Lori?
I was just curious what you would say to somebody who literally is watching maybe right now and can't figure out how to get there. Like, how do I get started? How do I change all of this crap in my life? What's my first step? I mean,
well, I mean, personally, the very first step I would say is that I think, like Daliber, he made a very valid point. It's very difficult to do this by yourself.
Yeah.
When I had that incident happen to me in October, it threw me for a loop and it messed me up energetically.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't manifest to save my life, and finances were going down and all my savings was being drained. And I was like, oh my God, I can't go much longer. And so I had to have a meeting and be very coachable with my spiritual teacher and say, I'm listening, I'm open, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to listen, I'm here. And he had to help me open up inside of me to figure out what it was that was in me that wasn't in alignment. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes we don't know, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes we don't even know what our values are. You know how many times I hear people say, I don't even know what my purpose is,
Mm-hmm.
what I should be doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would say, to answer that question, Lori, I think that you should set up an appointment with somebody like me or
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, but somebody that can have a very open perspective and see you
Mm-hmm.
and be able to look at it, you know, like
Yeah.
from a Rubik's Cube perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and help you break that down. And
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of times just doing one little consultation like that can open up and say, you know, where is it that you need to go? What do you need to do to be able to, you know, move forward? Like with some people, it's a very simple thing, and other people, it could be maybe a little bit of work, and then some people, it's a lot of work.
You just
Yeah.
need a way to get on
You
track.
need a way to get nudged. Like Brian and
Mhm.
Sophia are very fortunate because they have these local communities. And if you can find a support group or a group of spiritual community to hook up with and get these classes, Brian has all kinds of classes. I'm sure values is one of them. I can't imagine Jim not addressing this at some point.
Mhm.
But if you can't go locally somewhere, then you're left with virtual. And there's a number of them out there, of coaches out there, and
Mhm.
we've stumbled across two that are really really good and unique, and they do things in their own ways. Michelle Thompson is one of them, and I know members of our community have hooked up with Michelle
Mhm.
and gotten a lot of value out of it. Jeannie just said she had a consultation, a couple days ago with Michelle,
Mhm.
and it's sometimes you just need to nudge in the
Mhm.
right direction. And tell us about this workbook and this
Oh yeah.
audio.
So the workbook is basically, it just kind of breaks it down for you. It asks you a lot of questions to help you kind of dive into it,
Uh-huh.
to really kind of really understand like what your value system is. You know, I'm asking questions like, here, let me see. I'm going to pull it up real quick. I'm looking. Like, when was I the happiest? And where were you with others, and who were you with? Were you collaborating with anyone? You know, asking some, you know, some more defining questions that, like, I was proud when I did this, others shared this with me, and who contributing
Hmm.
factors to that. You know, like, I'm asking a lot of questions to kind of help you.
Well, that's
Really,
important because when
yeah.
I went through what I was going through, I had worked somewhere for 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that man's company represented my values and I represented his, and we worked really well together, and I had a wonderful career.
Mm-hmm.
And then things changed and I had to make changes. And so I picked another business to go into. And for those 5 or 6 years, at first it seemed great, but I wasn't even thinking in terms of my values anymore. I was thinking in terms of all the good things I was getting out of it financially
Mm-hmm.
and how it was helping me and my family financially.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I started recognizing that I was out of sync and something was really, really wrong and I was really miserable and not happy, my relationships failed. I mean, I had some good relationships going and they just tanked. And then I had no life except the job, and doing the kind of things that these people wanted me to do were not in alignment with what I had done most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know where to start. I just knew something was incredibly wrong. And so I was in this whirlwind emotionally, and I wasn't spiritually awake back then
Mm-hmm.
either. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Kind of
have the
stuck in a
benefit.
cycle.
I was stuck in a cycle. Thank you, Lori. I was
Mm-hmm.
stuck, and there was no way out. And I was getting heavier, and it was things were getting heavier and heavier. So with what you're doing is remember those times when
Mm-hmm.
you were at your
Mhm.
best,
Right,
when
right.
you
So
felt
you're
most
trying to
comfortable.
remind, yeah, you're trying, it just kind of takes you through a series of questions where you're asking yourself some questions that you don't really think about.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then when you do that, then you're, you know, you're like, well, what are some of the actions I can do? Or, you know, kind of like painting another picture for
Hmm.
yourself.
You're
But
recreating yourself.
Sophia has a question for you. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's not so much a question is an appreciation that Michelle and I are somewhat on the same page as far as speaking with clients and people that we work with. is reminding them of their values, because the culture that we live in, they peddle confusion fueled by greed.
Mhm.
It's that simple.
It's true.
It's like the
Very true.
cereal box in in the grocery
Mm-hmm.
store, the cereal aisle,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing people to find or rediscover it, if you will, for themselves, helps lay that foundation of earth and pinnacles, so you can equate, this is the foundation, what's the blood, which would be the water, which would be the emotion. And when
Mhm.
things start to line up and they're synergetic, as far as the four directions or elements, if you will,
Mhm.
then things start to settle and solidify. And with you, when you, like what Teresa had spoke to, when you have somebody that has the same value set and the same emotion and the same action, the same thought, together we have power.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the more
Absolutely.
people, and that's another reason why I love this channel. And because if you
Mhm.
have like-minded people, we can help each other stand up when life happens and our foundations start to shake and we're questioning, is this really who I am? When we lose a loved one or we lose a job, we lose a piece of our identity. And if you
Mm-hmm.
lose something, metaphysically speaking, you are to replace it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Abs-
Mhm.
in my opinion, is to be replaced with love. And that's
Mhm.
what this group is full of.
Mhm.
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 So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's
That
what
was
I have on
beautiful.
that.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Sylvia. That was
Sophia.
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
That was
You're
really
welcome.
good.
Wonderfully said. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I so agreed. That's why I love this group so much. It's so nice to like have like-minded people.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got, a different way of looking at things or, I really appreciate the way you're coming across, Sophia, the words you're saying and the way you're comparing things to like earth and, all the different kind of elements and stuff. That's awesome. I love that. I always have to majority of the clients that come to me, they find me off the internet. So they're Googling hypnotist or a life coach or something like that, or even just anxiety. And so I have to approach things very delicately and very simplistically with most people. So when we have conversations like this, it's always like really good for me, because I love it. It's like I usually have this kind of conversation with my sister. I'm like, all right, hey, I was talking to my spirit guy the other day, and she was like, I did some astro travel, and she's like, oh my God, let me tell you where I went. It's like I don't get to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Not those conversations you can't have with most people because they just don't
yeah.
get it. And
Mm,
that's the hard part of being spiritual and
yeah,
not having those others around you. So, I
yeah.
mean, you need almost like you need that constant connection, that support
Mm,
from your guides, from your friends, from the people that are like minded. You need that so much to carry
yeah.
you through until you're strong enough to hold yourself up to that
You know,
standard.
can I say something?
Absolutely.
I mean, I actually want to share something.
All right.
So I recently, and I think that people can relate to this. This is why I want to share this.
Okay.
So recently, so I do like automatic handwriting.
Me
I
too. I
I
use a lot.
channel, so yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so when I do that, I'm writing, and I had some information come through that I just went, how's that going to happen? You know? And I mean, and I was like, okay, I just got a house over here, so how, there was a lot of like, okay, so I'm not gonna say no. I'm just gonna like, okay, well, show me how to get there. So basically what I was told was eventually I was gonna have a retreat center. And I was like, I never thought of that. Really? And I was like, okay. So I was like, this is really interesting. And they told me it wasn't like tomorrow, so
Mhm.
I could just calm down and didn't have to go shopping for land. But, and so I was like, all right, well, just kind of guide me in that direction. So interestingly, all of a sudden I started getting all these clients coming to me that are bringing their children. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I started working in the very beginning when I started my practice. All I wanted to do was work with children, but I chose not to, didn't pay attention to my value system. And I chose not to because children are, they could be fixed so much easier than adults.
They're open to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so they're, it's because they don't have all the programming and the
Yeah.
years and years of patterns that have
Yeah.
been built in.
Yep.
And
Cycles.
children are so wonderful to work with.
Mhm.
So I was working with this one child who is pulling her hair, literally pulling her hair out. And as I'm doing this, intuitively, I was picking up on some stuff. So I just kind of like moved in front of her and I got really close to her and I go, do you get really uncomfortable in large spaces with a lot of people? I mean, when do you experience the most anxiety in these spaces? And she's like, yeah. And I said, like when you're at school or when you're on the playground or when you're at a party and she's like, yes. And I said, I think you're an empath. And so I said, let's do a little experiment. And she's like, okay. So mom was sitting right there on the sofa. And I said, okay, mom, what I want you to do is I want you to pick an emotion and I want you to just focus on it really hard. Think of an event, pick the emotion, focus on it really hard. And I had her, I said, just look at me. And she did. And I said, when mom's ready, then we'll start. And so she's like, I'm ready. So I said, okay, really feel it, play it out. I mean, I really want you to pull that emotion up. And she's like, okay. So she's over there pulling up this emotion. And I said, okay, now close your eyes and focus on your mom. Now, this is how I want you to do it. And I said, I want you to literally almost feel your energy like diving into her. And I just kind of went through the whole process of how I wanted her to do it. And I said, and then when you're done, I want you to just kind of come back. And she said, okay. So then I said, tell me when you have it. She says, I have it. And I said, okay, what is it? And she goes, she's feeling sad. And her mother looks at her and tears are just running down her eyes. And her mom, and she goes, oh my God. And she goes, well, do you know what I'm sad about? And she goes, yes, the cat dying. And it was like, I mean, she was on point. The mother was tripping, and I was like, and so I said, okay, we're going to do an energy exercise. I'm going to show you how to cleanse your energy. I'm going to show you how to how to ground yourself. And so I took her through this whole exercise, how to get herself back centered. And then I said, okay, how do you feel? I said, do you feel like pulling right now? And she said, no. And I said, how do you feel? And she goes, I feel really good. And I said, that's you. That's the real you. All this that you've been feeling all along has been
others. Yeah.
Yeah. And so her mother just started bawling and bawling and bawling. And I was like, are you okay over there? Such a beautiful lesson for her to learn so young. And
seems like it was more of a lesson for the mother too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So then I was like,
exactly, Dalibor.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here going, man, I just love doing this. Oh my God. Like my heart was just like, this makes me feel good. This makes me feel like, like
makes your heart zing.
Yeah. I mean, when she left, I was just so like, I mean, I was just like that. And then the next morning I got up and I was taking my laundry and I was hanging it up in the closet. So it was a very mundane activity. And then I hear Children of the Light. And I went, what? Like that. And then I went, what? And so I was, so then I hear, go look it up or something like that. And I'm like Googling nothing. And I was like, because I come up thinking Children of the Corn, you know. And I was like,
It's easy to go there.
No, nothing, you know, like some game or something like that. And I was like, so I was like, okay, that website is even available. That can't be right. And I was like, okay. And so then they were like, call Vera and call Vera's mom. And I was like, okay. And they were like, you need to be developing children, you know, because they're the new world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I called her mom. I said, can you talk? And she goes, absolutely. So I called her and I said, what do you think about this? And I just kind of threw an idea at her. And she's like, oh my God, I know so many people whose kids could benefit from this. Oh my God, Michelle, blah, blah. And I was like, and then she showed me this place where these kids go and camp. And she's like, they have retreat centers and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I could start there. It was like, but I have no idea how to even do anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, this is going to have to be a nonprofit. I'm probably going to have money to raise to make this happen. I'm going to have a gala. So I'm, you know, I'm like sitting here going, I don't know how to do this stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden the people's names just start popping in my head. Call this person, call this person. This person knows how to do that. This person knows how to do that. I ended up making like this whole list of like, if they stay with us for a while, you know, and I was like, oh, maybe they could, you know, the company could pay for a scholarship for them, like their education, like 2 years of volunteering, you know, like when they get older, like let's say they volunteer when they're like 15 and 16 and helping out, like teaching the kids, you know, doing a little classes and stuff during the retreat.
Teaching them the basics, getting them started, familiar with it, you know, it's not a bad thing. You're not weird.
Yeah.
You know, you're
all
normal.
Classes though. I mean, you could do singing classes, you could do drumming classes, you could do yoga classes.
Kids love to be creative.
I know, right? You could do art classes, but you know, they could volunteer and then get a scholarship for doing that. You know, I was like, oh my God, I could turn this into a nonprofit. You know, and so the reason I wanted to tell you the story is because I have no clue how to start something like that. No clue. And yet I sat down and I wrote all my ideas down. And then I was like, all right, well, I need a person to help me with this. I need a person to help me with this. I need a person to help me with this, because I don't know how to do these things. I don't know how to set up a nonprofit. I don't know how to, you know, I've been advertising a certain way. How do I get the kids, you know, like, how do I find the parents that are willing or want, or how do you provide that to the parent? You know, there's a lot of, you know, setting up events like that. I've never set up a live event at a, you know, a campground, horses and, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. You know, and it's really got me thinking. So the reason I wanted to share the story is because of the question you asked, Lori. If I was to say to myself, this is too big for me, and it scares me, and it's not something I know how to do, then I wouldn't be aligning with what's important to me. And what's important to me is this world. Yeah. And the future of the world is the most important. And these children, they are our future, and they're not being taught. You know?
You know, 2 years ago when my guide told me that I was going to help start a channel and that I'd be on here doing this stuff, I thought he was nutso crazy. And I was like, there's no way this is going to happen. And then as I started my spiritual journey, I realized that I really loved it. I loved the changes that I saw in myself. And I started preparing to do it. So I started my Pure Love Ascension channel as just a channel to discuss ascension symptoms and all the things I was going through, never really realizing that that was like the catalyst for more to come. And here we are, several years later, doing this consistently, 160 shows under our belt. and sitting here talking to lots of people, and sharing all of this, you got to know that you got to take those steps. You got to really put yourself out there, and it's not comfortable. I'll tell you firsthand, it is not a comfortable feeling, but if you can get past it and you master it and you begin to do it, and you feel good about yourself and you're confident about yourself, you can do anything. I mean, if I can do this, anybody can do this.
Well, Michelle brings a important thing up here, and that is this understanding that you are not alone and you have resources.
Exactly.
And so,
and
so when you first see something and you go, "Oh my God, this is overwhelming. How do I do this?"
That's just like
You start looking for people that are in alignment with you,
Mm-hmm.
that feel the same way. That, oh, I'd love to get involved in that program. I have event planning, experience, or I have.
Yep.
So you start building a team.
That's it.
Right.
And that's what Teresa's very good at, is building a team.
Dalibor, what were you saying? I didn't mean to.
Yeah, well, that's the other dimension. Like you have to not just visualize, what you want, but be able to use
Picture
all
it.
5 senses. Just like in remote viewing, what does a retreat center look like? What does a retreat center sound like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like?
What are the activities?
What are the activities? And then consider it from like let's say a feng shui perspective. Okay, what are the helpful people that are gonna get me there? Or even from an alchemical perspective. Okay, first is the mental idea, and then comes correspondence. Okay, what does that correspond with? What types of people correspond with? Which one? How many people do I know that could help me get there? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So like-minded people, align yourself with them.
Yeah.
Get on board
And
together.
Michelle will. She's done it before.
Lift each other up.
Haven't you, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I
Just
always
seems-
the right people always show up. I mean,
Yes.
they always do. So
Yeah.
my guys are not going to tell me something that's going to be impossible for me to achieve.
Right on.
So it's and this is where we have to start. I mean, like, obviously it's not going to happen tomorrow, but obviously they want me to start something. Or they wouldn't be telling me. So maybe I just start communicating with some of these parents, and then maybe try to get some of these kids together in small groups.
There
and
you go.
eventually
There you go.
Build it and they will come.
Yep. That's it. Yep. One by one.
Build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very much like the opening that I was giving about Steiner's views on education. And it's all based on unlocking your values, running programs according to your values, but his education system called for doing exactly what you're trying to do with the kids. You empower them to be the best versions of themselves by opening up and unlocking all these creative things within them. So there's going to be plenty of people that are going to join with you on this. I'm getting that. I'm getting it right now. It's going to start, and it's going to be virtual groups, because they're already set up for school that way. Because a lot of them already have Zoom on their laptops.
That's interesting, because I never really thought about it.
It's going to be Zoom meetings at first.
Could be a virtual school to get started.
A virtual school to get started, and
to get the people acquainted with each other.
Build the camaraderie.
Exactly. To
and
see
the
if
support
these people
group.
You'll
work
have
together
a parent,
well.
I see parent volunteers dialing in.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm seeing parent volunteers dialing in.
Yep.
So you're going to have help from the parents. You're going to have, and you're going to find children who are stronger, who catch on faster than others, that will help you with your classes. So you'll have some older kids.
They can help the other kids
helping
too.
the other kids. I'm seeing all this right now.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. So that's interesting, because I was actually thinking about like starting it up live versus virtual. I didn't even give that a thought. So what are your thoughts on that, Teresa? Since you're like visualizing right now, I want to hear it.
I think that the live is like we're doing right now.
No, I meant like in person.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that's a kickoff. You get a couple of those under your belt. That's the right direction. You get a couple of those under your belt, and then from that you evolve your first virtual classroom. and then you build from there.
Okay.
Okay, so in other words,
She's getting a download.
In other words,
Teresa got a download.
Yeah,
the
she's
go
getting a
live.
download.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what we're doing right now. We're sharing it right now, and this is going to get out there because usually tons of people start watching this program after it ends.
Mm-hmm.
And by the morning, we've got 95 or 100 viewers. And by tomorrow evening, there'll be 2, so it grows. So the word will get out. So if you do a couple of live sessions, the word will get out. It'll get shared out. It'll get
So you
promoted.
can have a virtual school.
And then you'll have the ability to build the virtual.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things that her mother was telling me was that there's children that are friends with her daughter that are cutting themselves.
Yeah.
They're doing cutting.
Yep.
It's become popular. And
it's being mixed. It's being confused with what's going on there is because I have some recent experience with this myself. It's being misdiagnosed and labeled as Asperger's.
Really?
As part of it, yeah. Because
really?
Asperger's
I didn't know
children,
that.
they do go through this. They don't like bright lights. They like dark rooms. They like the doors closed. They don't want to be involved in social events or activities. If you take them anywhere where there's music or light, they just cringe. They're and some of them will start pulling. Some of them will start cutting. It's a symptom. Not all of them have it. So don't think I'm saying this is a cookie cutter,
No.
But many of them have it. So it's being misdiagnosed right now because that stigma. It's because it's such a widely prevalent in our society. There's a lot of people on the spectrum, and there's a lot of folks that have Asperger's.
Well,
So
Asperger's is autism. It's the same
a form
thing
of
almost.
autism.
Yeah. Right.
But it's very
Same
specific to external stimulus, like the
Mhm.
girl I was working with. When she joined the high school band, we were like, because she couldn't stand to be near any kind of musical instruments, but she started evolving and coming out of her shell. Another girl was pulling her hair out and cutting herself. But what I'm saying is that there are children who are experiencing this right now who never had any symptoms or any previous expressions of the spectrum the whole time they were growing up. So what is this, latent?
No, that's because
spectrum?
the kids are under extreme
Stress.
pressure from like the COVID
Right.
2 years.
And not
past,
only
you
that,
know?
you'd have to look at vaccinations. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
You'd
Oh,
have
yeah.
to look
There's all
at
kinds of stuff going on.
their
Yeah.
vaccinations. And I mean,
Yeah.
I heard that they're up to kids having up to 70 shots or something. I mean,
Oh yeah.
like,
They just
so,
announced today a new booster here in Maryland for
yeah. So
two
that's what I
different kinds of
mean.
boosters.
And,
It's like-
and that causes all that spectrum. I know from experience because my
Yeah.
son was one of the first that were affected from an adverse side effect from a vaccine and
there you
became
go.
autistic.
Yeah.
Based on the vaccines.
Yeah, but
Wow.
so this is
And
kicking
he's
in so
and
much.
this is one of the first ones because he's
Yeah.
35 now, and what I dealt with, and all the symptoms that you talked about. Couldn't stand. He always had to have his head shaved, and couldn't stand hair on his neck, and social issues, dyslexia. I could go into anyway. So I'm very experienced in that, and of course, with being in the mental health side with the ministry mental health branch, we that followed that quite a bit. So yeah.
Sophia, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I did. I think each individual person is not only individual physically, mentally, and spiritually, because there is threefold in my persuasion. But actually, I mean, some schools are implementing meditation and giving gifted children coping skills that in appearance and across many trains of thought would be received well. And I would say, coming from someone myself who had to isolate because not knowing how to control my gifts, it's just...
This is true. This is so true. Most people that are empathic have a very hard time with it.
Well, when you're empathic, psychic, intuitive, on top of everything else.
Girl,
I mean,
I'm right on top of that. It was the same thing. This is one of the reasons why I became such a extreme introvert for a very long
Yeah.
time. And it was me, it's I had to kind of like teach myself how to not be that way.
I'm getting a message right now, Michelle. Remember Chip Coffee.
Chip coffee.
Chip, he did the.
I read his book.
Chip did the. He's a psychic and a
Psychic
channeler,
medium and
and
ghost
he
hunt
did
for 'em.
Growing up
psychic.
psychic.
He did
Mhm.
psychic kids program.
That's
There
right.
was a lot of teenagers and young people who were coming to him with all of this empathic responses, and
Mm,
they just did not understand what was going on or what was happening to them. And he brought them together first individually, one by one, and then he created a program called Psychic Kids.
hmm
And then he started taking them on investigations
I
with
watched it
him
all the
to help
time.
them develop their talents.
It's
wow.
fascinating.
And he even
Mhm.
got together with them when they grew up to check back in on them to
And
see
he
how they were
mentored
doing as
them.
adults. And he
Oh,
mentored them.
wow.
Mhm,
And that's
That's
how he
amazing.
started. He started
Wow.
the same way you did.
mhm,
A
mhm,
kid and a parent came to him,
mhm.
and he started talking, and he found out, oh my God, these kids need this. They need the ability to
Right.
hook up
They
with
need to
them.
be understood too,
They need to
and
be
to
understood.
understand it themselves as well. So,
Yeah.
and the parents need a little education
Yeah.
on it as well.
Well, so when you talk to children that cut or pull their
Uh-huh.
hair out,
Yep.
they always say that they needed a release. Like
Yes.
they
Mhm.
need
An
like
outlet.
they need
Yeah.
something that they can channel into
hmm
Mm-hmm.
that's going to
Mhm.
calm them down.
Yeah.
And when you're a child that doesn't understand this stuff and you're very empathic, and most of these children are coming in with gifts, okay?
hmm
They have no idea what it is. They don't have a parent that even knows what it is.
Right.
Or
Right.
understands.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those who do go to their parents will often have a knee-jerk reaction like,
Mhm.
what are you on, drugs? Is there something wrong with you?
Mhm.
And they'll start,
Yeah.
who are these friends you're hanging out with?
Well,
Right.
I would say I would
And they
say
start
this.
Or they
treating
put them
them.
on ADD medicine or something
That's
like
what I'm saying. They
that.
get
It's like,
misdiagnosed.
yeah.
I think it's visible in the wider society too, because tattooing and piercing, that's the same thing as cutting.
Mm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well,
Well,
some people see it as art on your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
that's what I was
pain.
thinking.
It's pain.
It is pain.
it is
Yeah.
pain,
Yeah.
but
Yes, it
but when they
is.
go to do it, Dalibor is right in that if they're tattooing themselves or they're doing it in a harmful
Mhm.
way and
Mhm.
not for art purposes, and
And as an
they
outlet.
do some of that.
Yeah.
There's a kid right down the street who was tattooing himself all over his body, and he got infected, and he
Mm.
was
Mhm.
the outlet. The reason they go for the cutting and the hair pulling, the ones that
Hey,
I've talked to,
Teresa,
I got
yeah,
it.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
yeah,
I
go
got
ahead.
it.
There's somebody in the chat room.
We got it. We got it.
Okay,
Okay,
We're on it.
good.
thank
Okay.
you, Michelle. Thank you.
No worries.
The reason when you talk to these kids, the one that I was working with, to put it to you this way, they've convinced themselves that there's something wrong with themselves.
Mhm.
They don't understand the gift, or they
Mhm.
don't understand why they have the feeling. Peers, teachers, parents who don't understand
Mhm.
have come at them full force, and so they're going into a self-programming of I'm worthless, I'm useless, there's something wrong with me, I'm an infection in my family, I'm different, I have to and so they start the cutting and the pulling because they're devaluing their selves. They
Right.
think there's something
Mhm.
really wrong with themselves.
Right.
So that painful outlet is their way of crying out for
Mhm.
help.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead, Sophia.
This is, in my opinion, part of what I struggled with when I was younger is the fact that society is telling you, specifically Hollywood, this is acceptable, this is acceptable, this is acceptable. But if you do this, and they're automatically setting up poor cognitive skills. And then when that sensitive person, be it a child or an adult, has a reaction, all of a sudden it's their problem. And that used to irk me so bad. And I have to kind of throw out there, cutting and getting a tattoo are not the same thing.
Right.
Okay. So, no, you're talking to
Yeah.
somebody who has one really big tattoo. I use it for shadow work
Mhm.
because pain can be healthy, in my opinion, but not self-inflicted. If you are hurting
Right.
yourself, if you don't have a
Mhm.
professional
Mm-hmm.
involved, that
Yeah.
is toxic.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
tattoos and cutting are not the same.
I have
Uh-oh.
tattoos, so I totally. Yeah, I'm like that too, but I don't see it. I don't see it the same. I see it like you do, Sophia. It's an expression. It's a way of art. It's like if I'm going to dye my hair or pluck my eyebrows or go get a wax, it's going to hurt.
It's
And
the
Mhm.
reason behind it. Why are
Mhm.
you doing it?
Yeah.
What is the
Right.
purpose?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go
Here's
ahead,
the
Sophia.
here's the other disconnect, in my opinion. Once upon a time, gifted people were born into a family that had the ability to help them navigate their skills. We don't have that anymore.
No.
And as far as I know, the vast majority of us really don't go through any kind of rite of passage except for
Well,
Right.
catechism,
okay.
which is what
Okay.
I went
So
through.
right. So this is
Mhm.
interesting.
Good
You
point.
said that
Very good.
because part of the thing that I got was that I was going to be working with the parents as well. Like they were going to be participating on some level, like they were going to get their own kind of coaching. Like, this is how you deal with a gifted child, or here's how you handle this situation, or this is why they're doing this. This is why I let the parents come in with their child in the session, because I want them hearing what I'm saying. I want them to understand what is going on. You know what I mean? And it's and I've just found that the parent grows.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen. I've
Yes.
worked with other children like this before in the past, just, sporadically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because they're dealing with that kind of child, they're having to change, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yes.
I've even told a parent, I was like, this is a highly sensitive child, okay, who is very, very, very empathic and intuitive. And when you're behaving like this, it's going to be like
Yeah.
50 times the amount that you would feel.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Mhm.
you
I
cannot
agree with
behave that
that.
way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree
Mhm.
with
And
that.
what
Mhm.
happens is it's transformative for the entire family, because in our case, once it was like a domino effect. Once the mother opened up to the child, then the siblings stopped treating
Right.
the child a certain way.
That's
Mhm.
exactly
And
that's
the
exactly
Mhm.
what
co-parents,
happened.
the
Yeah.
co-parenting,
So the
Mhm.
working with the child changed the mother changed, all the other kids
the whole
changed,
family.
the
Yeah.
whole family changed.
Domino effect. Yep.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I say if you're the light, everybody changes. And
Right.
if everybody's not changing in your life, that's something that you've got to
Then
kind of,
you're in lack of light.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. You're a candle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Instead of the light.
two value adds here right now
Mhm.
is your value, your
Mhm.
values, identifying that and aligning it with this program and this desire to want to do this. And
Mhm.
also, when you're doing this program, you're unlocking or helping them to find
Mhm.
what is their value
Mhm.
in terms of how they want to live the quality of their life and share with others. So
Mhm.
you're transforming not only yourself by making this happen for yourself,
Mhm.
by manifesting this, but you're also going to be putting
Right.
people on a path
Well,
that will
Mhm.
yeah,
help
I
them.
mean, it's
Yeah, that's incredible.
it's very simple. When a
Yeah.
parent is screaming and yelling and and treating a child in a way like you're an idiot and calling them names because they're frustrated because they don't know how to get them to do the things they want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do that, they're creating this negative energy. So when they change the way that they approach it and they start approaching it from love, then the child responds differently. They start behaving better. The parent starts having a better relationship, more communication. They
Yeah.
start expanding that onto other people. And then all these other people start responding because they're responding to them
Mhm.
differently. They're
Yeah.
coming from a place of love, love
Yeah.
and acceptance. And does that,
Wow.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and it all comes down to what? When we stop fighting what it is inside,
Yeah.
and we start leaning into it. Even if we don't know how, like the reason I told you the whole story about all this was because I may not know how, but I'm gonna take the steps that I need to, even if it's baby steps. And
Right.
eventually, do you see what I'm saying?
Yep. Set those little goals, reach them. And then when you've got that one, you make the next one and then you attain that. And next thing you know, things are happening. Yeah.
And yeah. So if you don't know where to go, like you really have to just identify those things inside first, like what is it I truly desire? What do I truly desire? And just start moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And
so, Michelle, we're coming to the end of the show, and I wanted to ask you, do you have any final thoughts about this topic?
Well, yeah, one thing I did definitely want is I'm giving away this free ebook, and I'm also giving away a hypnosis audio that they can listen to.
Awesome.
The way that you get it is by booking a free consult with me.
Okay.
So the website address is in the
description. Yep. Everything can be found there. Click on those links. It'll take you right to it. Yep.
You just go in there, you click on it, you go to the tab where it says book an appointment. You book a free consultation with me. It doesn't cost you anything but your time. You come in, we talk about like what's going on. I give you a little bit of, some pointers and kind of set you in the right direction. And then you get the workbook and you get a free audio. So
that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, Jeannie Griffin has done that. She spent some time with you on the phone and downloaded she said it was really easy. She downloaded the workbook and the meditation audio. Well, it's an audio file.
Yeah, it's an audio file. I gave her the whole file. So
that's
and
wonderful.
That's what I'll be doing is I'm not just going to give you a link to something. I'm going to actually give it to you so it's yours.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's really nice of you to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it puts me in front of new people. And it's people that have never talked to me before. And maybe they, quote unquote, may not need it, but they may know somebody else.
That's right.
Yeah,
somebody else that can be helped from it. Yeah. And they might make a good contact with you because they might be interested in doing this.
Very much
absolutely. Absolutely.
Good opportunity. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, and sometimes you just might end up having a friend instead.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That has actually happened to me. I'm like, I just suddenly end up, like, you don't really need my help,
Yeah.
What you really need is you need me as a friend because I love you already.
That's great.
Well, you're always welcome. You're always welcome.
Absolutely.
If you see a topic, if you catch a topic that we're covering and you want to in on it,
sure.
Or you want to sit in on it, just send me a note. I'll make sure you get a link, and join us anytime because it's been far too long since we've seen you. We love your energy.
It's been a great conversation. We so much enjoy having you on. You're just such a pleasure. Yep.
We've missed you.
Insightful. Yep. Love it. Yep.
Yeah. So just to kind of tally it up, you book the free consultation with me and you get the free workbook. And so it's like 3 things you get for free.
Nice.
Just for spending a little time with me. And anyway, so that's it. And then the final thing I just want to say is really like take a look inside. If your life is not the way you want it to be, there's something that's not in alignment with what you truly desire.
Right.
You're not taking the actions in that direction. And happiness does come from, living the life that you want to live, the way you want to live it. And you are a master creator. All of us are. All you have to do is get in alignment with that. And literally the universe just starts opening up, when you're on the train, doors open.
That's right. Yeah. And self-love is a big key too. If you can learn to love yourself.
Hey, Grandpa Brian, what's your takeaway from all this?
Yeah, he's been quiet this whole time.
He's the observer.
Yeah.
Any comments there, Brian? Oh, can't hear him. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Brian. Can't hear you.
Bummer, dude.
Yeah, he just
Oh,
his
I think it froze now too.
Yeah.
microphone's not turned on
No,
or
he's
something.
not. He's not frozen. He's just not.
Oh,
He had this
Hearing
the
it.
last
Mike.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Last week was the same thing. He just doesn't give out any
Yeah.
volume,
Yeah.
and he's not muted. So,
Wow.
well,
Sorry,
anyway,
guys.
sorry guys.
Go
But
ahead.
so next week, stay tuned, folks, because we're going to have another interesting discussion. Only this is on biodynamic spiritual gardening with using the Rudolf Steiner approach. With Earth Heroes Shay Ryan Douglas. He's going to join us again. If you recall, he was on the show with Mark Bright, our joyologist, with his retreat.
Nice guy.
So he's a Earth Heroes video that he was working on, documentary.
Amazing work.
Amazing work. And he might actually have some stories about some successful biodynamic gardening approaches. Gazakov brought the subject to my attention, our attention. So Gaza is going to be on there showing us what he's been doing to implement some of those practices on his own property, along with Julianne, who's also been practicing with some of these. Jeannie Musgrave Griffin has recently bought a calendar for the lunar cycles, because it's all very spiritual based way of giving back to the earth. We take so much from the earth when we harvest, and we try to do things, some of us organically, but there are ways you can replenish the earth and help it rejuvenate while you're taking from it. So it creates a synergy between you and the earth, and it's a very highly spiritual way of putting that energy into the earth and receiving the benefits from it. Healthier crops, better tasting food, and so forth. So it's going to be a wonderful discussion. We'll actually be able to hear about examples of how this is being done successfully with Gazakov and Julianne Payne.
Sophia had a final thought there.
Yep,
Go ahead,
sure.
Sophia.
I enriched my relationship with the North, which is the Earth, which is Venus, which is Pentacles, by recycling.
Yes.
So before you can launch something big, like Teresa's speaking, start with something small.
Small.
It all matters.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. It was nice to converse.
Yeah, I love your comments. Thank you so much, Sophia, for jumping in.
Sophia adds a lot.
And you know what, Sophia? You're absolutely right, because people like me who do container gardens, who have very small spaces, we can still do our part. And I started by creating my own composting system this summer, and natural fertilizers after I got that attack from the chemicals. I was like, no more of this. And so there's little things that we can do to start this process, even if we don't have a big farm or a great big garden. So you brought up a really good point. Go ahead.
Awesome. I wanted to give Brian one last chance there. Okay. Do you have your mic working yet there, Brian?
He's muted. Brian, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Hey. Michelle, I've had 5 spiritual retreats. So, if you, I'm sure they have my email if you have any questions on how I did it and the process that I used. Just email me and I can let you know.
We lost him.
It never fails. It never
I'll
fails.
hook you up with his email.
Hook me up with him.
I'll hook you up with him, okay? You guys can go one-on-one. He's in Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
Brian Richards, I'll hook you up.
do a group chat with me on Facebook Messenger.
Yes,
and
I'll
get
hook
me
you
hooked
up
with him. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Awesome.
There he is.
Brian, she's going to connect us. Teresa's going to connect us so we can chat.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. End up happening.
Because
Go ahead, Brian.
I would definitely like to do something with kids next year as far as a spiritual retreat and healing.
Ooh, awesome.
That'd be cool.
So there you go.
Where you
I'd like to pick
where
your
you
head
located,
about that.
Brian? Okay.
Indianapolis, Indiana.
You're in Indiana. Okay.
Indianapolis,
Awesome.
Yeah. So the place that I've been looking at, that I've kind of been, rolling around, is in Wimberley, Texas. And well, at least that's the first place that was shown to me. I mean, it seems like it has everything. It's absolutely beautiful. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll have it in different parts of the world, everywhere, at
Sure.
different locations. Yeah, that would be cool.
I see it, Michelle.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
Teresa, you and I are gonna have to sit down and talk. You're like seriously channeling these days.
I see
oh,
it,
yes,
man.
she is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
most definitely. Yep.
Oh, that's been going on for a while. Yeah.
Yes, it has. Yes, it
Wow.
has. Huh.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Awesome.
I love
All
it.
right, folks.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Oh, always, Michelle.
Oh,
Such a
yeah.
pleasure to have you. No doubt.
Yeah. And
All
I'll just
right.
you'll keep a tab, and I'll drop announcements. And if you ever see one you want to jump in on, just
Okay.
send me a message. But I'm going to hook you and Brian up for sure
Awesome.
Okay.
in the
That sounds
messenger
great.
text box. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, everybody in chat. Thank you for the people that are going to watch this later.
Yes.
Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. That's why we come here every Friday night and we spend all this time and energy on this show is to bring this stuff to you. All right.
Cool.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Much love and
Much
peace
love
to
and-
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.